Hi folks, my name's Jem, I'm the Crazy Pigeon Lady, and it's my mission to entertain, educate and inspire you with all things pigeon and dove. Welcome to this hashtag Ask the Pigeon Lady, where I will be answering your questions. If you haven't asked a question yet, please do pop it in the comments below, and I will endeavour to get to as many questions as I possibly can. Okay, first up we have this question which has come in from Jack Tin Jane, and Jane asks how to help my local feral pigeons. She also talked in her question about the difficulties surrounding this, including fines for feeding pigeons and things like that. So I'll talk to a few of those things. So, Jane, there are lots of ways that you can help your local feral pigeons. Perhaps the most important thing you can do is feed them. Now, I'll get onto the legalities of that in a moment, but if you live in an area where there aren't specific legal restrictions or fines or penalties imposed for feeding pigeons, then it is definitely something you can do. The supply of food for feral pigeons is not guaranteed, and most of their food comes from human sources, so our rubbish, dropped food and things like that, and it attracts pigeons to frequent places where humans eat, so outdoor cafes and things like that, which is where they tend to attract lots of persecution because of the fears of hygiene issues surrounding pigeons being in close contact with places where people eat. So if you want to help feral pigeons by feeding them, you can do so by first of all making sure that you're feeding them an appropriate food. So please, as tempting as it is and as easily available as it is, please don't feed them bread or any human food. It is not nutritionally terribly balanced or good for them. It may fill up their stomachs and they may be very enthusiastic about eating it, but it's not good for them nutritionally. So the best thing you can feed feral pigeons is a mixed seed diet, ideally pigeon seed, which will be specially mixed and formulated for pigeons, but any kind of mixed wild bird seed will probably be very much appreciated by the pigeons. I would say if you're feeding pigeons, try not to feed too much. So don't dump a huge sack of food in one place. What that will do is that will encourage the pigeons to congregate in huge numbers if they get fed regularly, and that will attract all sorts of unwanted attention. Better to distribute the feeding around in different areas around your town centre or your city to break up the flocks so you get smaller flocks. Also better, if you possibly can, to feed in an open grassed area like a park or something like that, where the food kind of disappears amongst the grass and is more easily foraged by the pigeons, encourages the pigeons to disperse. If you spread the food widely, and of course pigeon poop is going in the grass where it's going to fertilise it and all of that good stuff, rather than lots of droppings and things accumulating on the pavement, which again attracts all sorts of unwanted attention and encourages the pigeons to end up being persecuted as a nuisance for creating lots of mess on public pavements and paths. So pigeon mix or wild bird seed mix, distribute it widely, ideally in a grassed area in smaller amounts. Pay attention to whether other people are feeding the pigeons, particularly on a regular basis. It might be that the pigeons are actually getting pretty well fed in amongst all of the people that are feeding them. So you can feed them less often if they are getting regular support from other people. So as on to the legalities of pigeon feeding, unfortunately, because of the prejudice towards pigeons, and this is based on a lot of sort of misconceptions about pigeons, which I won't get into, in some towns and cities there are local laws, bylaws, things like that, which restrict pigeon feeding or impose penalties for doing so. I won't get into the legal complexities of this, but I would strongly advise you that if you are feeding in an area where that is the case, it's probably not a good idea to do so. I can't really advocate you going and feeding and getting yourself into trouble. So if you are going to feed pigeons, make sure you're doing so in an area where there are not penalties or fines being imposed. Do so discreetly, don't put too much food down. If someone else is feeding the pigeons, you can enjoy the experience of sitting there and joining them and watching the pigeons, even if you're not necessarily feeding them yourself. Again, it's better to feed the seed diet rather than the bread and things, because that'll be more easily cleared up by the pigeons and is less likely to attract rats or other animals animals like that, which again will attract more prejudice and persecution. So there you go. I hope that's helped you out, Jane. You can help out your feral pigeon friends by feeding them a good quality mixed pigeon seed or wild bird seed diet, distributing it widely, not feeding too much, feeding in a grassed or parkland area if you can, feeding discreetly, and making sure you avoid feeding in areas where you might get yourself into trouble with the law. Thank you very much for asking your question. I hope that's helped you out, Jane, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of Hashtag Ask the Crazy Pigeon Lady. Bye bye.